The curriculum artifact our group chose to analyze is a globe, a spherical or rounded object representing the Earth. To evaluate this artifact in the context of curriculum theory and equity, we explore historical, geographical, spatial, and temporal perspectives while considering both literal and metaphorical interpretations of the globe. Following our analysis, we look forward to guiding the class in a discussion to further interrogate connections between our artifact and equity in curriculum studies.
A study of curriculum might begin with its early origins, a time we can liken to the Pangaea theory where the tectonic plates pushed up against one another, a single entity. Egan, in What is Curriculum, notes that two questions guided understanding: what should the curriculum contain, and what is the best way to organize these contents? This simple focus, if you will, correlates to the supercontinent of Pangaea, whereby information was held in one place, the master or instructor. Over 2,000 years, or 200 million in plate tectonic theory, new theories emerged. Here we think of Pinel and Dutar, who worked with the deaf and mentally disabled, Seguin, who worked with the learning disabled, and eventually Montessori. Focus on methodology gathered momentum, and a new optimism about man's potential led to Dewey's research. Here we see, as Egan notes, emphasis on the question how, as distinct from what, and focus on the individual learner. One might liken these understandings to the continents we know today, distinct from each other with individual characteristics. Egan notes that to know what curriculum should contain requires a sense of what the contents are for. And with that understanding, this image of the globe might best represent where we are today, curriculum as influenced by its designers, the educators who prioritize its focus, and the students on the receiving end.
When we think about curriculum, we are thinking about identity. What we teach depends on what we value, who we are, and where we are. In a topography for Canadian curriculum theory, Chambers says that the classic existential question, who am I, can be posed only by people for whom where they are is not an issue, the place itself apparently being fully known and well defined. Curriculum is impacted by where you live. Consider the differences in lived experiences between someone in the Northern Hemisphere versus the Southern Hemisphere. But what if the very tools we use to understand questions of where are flawed? The most widely known map of the world is called the Mercator projection and has been in use since the 16th century. The Mercator projection is useful for navigation, but it provides a false sense of relative size between countries. One consequence of the widespread use of a disproportionate map is that the countries closest to the equator appear to be smaller than their actual size. This smaller projected size can be mistakenly linked to perceived smaller importance. How can we answer questions of who am I if we don't really know where am I? According to Chambers, posing the question where is here implies a preoccupation with where we are in relation to other places. And so curriculum is about where. Here versus there. The things that matter to me here may not be relevant to someone there. Curriculum is also about interactions and implications. Curriculum must help us to understand the interactions among different people who might answer questions of who am I and where am I differently. And Canadian curriculum theory cannot ignore the echoes of colonialism that linger. The hegemony of Anglo culture continues. If textbooks are about somewhere else or somebody else, how can you understand who you are?
As we think about curriculum and cartography, we can also think about global citizenship. According to Oxfam, a global citizen is someone who is aware of and understands the wider world and their place in it. They take an active role in their community and work with others to make our planet more equal, fair, and sustainable. Who is a global citizen? Is it someone who has lived in multiple locations, traveled locally and internationally, experienced oppression in their respective communities, or is it someone who has lived a multitude of experiences, and who makes the decisions of global citizenship? While global citizenship can be about awareness, it's also about the narratives we tell ourselves and each other. Jerome Bruner says narrative knowing occurs through reflection on personal experience through storytelling. And Kanu and Glor say narrative knowing allows an examination of the past, but also the opportunity to influence the future. Storytelling in technology was used by Nicholas Ng Foote and colleagues in a social action curriculum research project conducted in the Ottawa region, which focused on marginalized youth at a special school in the community. Ezra, a student in the school, used storytelling and incorporated technology to create a digital artifact of his own life story in all its authenticity. If we're all stories in the end and curriculum asks the questions of who are we, how do we honor all stories? How do we make room for all stories to coexist, for the story of the Indigenous youth who represents Canada's racist past, present, and future, as well as the marginalized youth of other communities and the Syrian refugee children? How are those stories to be honored?
Transitioning from curriculum, we can also connect our artifact to the practice of curere. Pinar suggests that the infinitive form of the noun curriculum, curere, meaning to run the course, implies a framework for reflecting on the educational experiences that shape our self-understanding and our interpretations of society. Meanwhile, to find growth and transformation in curere, Kierkegaard argues that individuals need to detach from the environment, become aware of individuality, become aware of actions, and become responsible for them. In Curere to the Rescue, Teachers as Amateur Intellectuals in a Knowledge Society, Kanu and Glor inform that detachment can only be achieved when we are physically removed from our environment. In this sense, Curere can be likened to the overview effect, a state of mental clarity experienced by astronauts when viewing Earth from outer space, which gives them an uncanny sense of understanding the bigger picture. The overwhelming beauty of the Earth hanging in the void of space becomes juxtaposed with the harsh reality of the social injustices, conflicts, and inequities transpiring on Earth's surface. Engaging an orbital perspective through Curere is a sobering opportunity for us to proverbially shine light into many of the spaces that perhaps educators are uncomfortable to acknowledge need inspection. From this vantage point, we can reflect on the light and the dark in our practices, predict seasons of change, analyze the temporality of our revolution, and find our synthetical moment within the global context. Through the prism of Curere, our identities can be more than just what others have given to us to make sense of their realities. The key is the path or journey one takes and what is discovered. To look at the world and marvel at one's place in it, we must be encouraged to use our imaginations.